the Kingdom of the Wicked.
Indeed, yes, yes.
Which you trace the...
Yes, I think this is an obsession. I suppose in some ways I ought to apologize for it, but it seems to be the major theme of our age has been this war between good and evil. I mean, the fact that evil exists, I think, was spectacularly shown by the Nazis. But people were scared of using the term. I remember when we had this little My Lai massacre in Vietnam. In the 60s, Time magazine used the word evil, I think possibly for the first time in journalism. And people began to consider that such a thing did exist. It wasn't just a question of people being deprived, lacking a good education, lacking a good environment, which, if these improved, would make them good. It's rather the sense that there was a quality, there's a substance in life, which we call evil, which is a kind of theological substance, which we have to fight against. I believe this with all my heart. A lot of people don't. The tendency of the socialists, the communists, of course, is to deny it. Everything depends on environment. I think it's there, and I think that the pogroms, the Holocaust during the war, during the Nazi regime, proves it. It is there. It's something that gets into people.
A theological substance. You trace the development of Christianity in the early days of, during the Roman Empire and Christian and the Wicked. And I guess you have portrayed Christianity as good and the Romans as bad.
Well, that's a bit too simple. I mean, the title of the book, The Kingdom of the Wicked, is, in fact, what the Hebrews, in Hebrew, I think just before the title page, you have this translated into Hebrew, or rather, my title is a translation from the Hebrew. The Jews call the Roman Empire the Kingdom of the Wicked, and it did, during this period, the first 100 years after the death of Christ, manifest considerable evil in the emperors, and I suppose finally, during that period, in the destruction of the Jews were destroyed. Rather, their city was pounded into dust. They were massacred by the Romans, and the diaspora, the great trek through the wilderness began again. I was interested in that period, though, because I felt that nobody had, as yet, written a novel in which you got both sides of the story. We read the New Testament, we read the Bible. We have the Gideon Bible in our hotel rooms, and we can read all about Paul's voyages. But we never read about what's going on in the Roman Empire at the same time, what's going on in Rome. And it's rather like America and Europe. If you sneeze, we catch cold. When Rome sneezed, Israel caught cold. And that's what I was really trying to show. But it is a comic book. I must emphasize that. It's meant to be a funny book, because I think the whole situation was quite comic. God was playing big practical jokes, as ever.
So do you.
Well, yes. Of course, I create God. What a terrible thing to say. I mean, if you write a book about God, you're creating God.
Well, man has created God.
Heresy.
What's wrong with that? Man has created God. You're a lapsed Catholic, according to the publicity material from Arbor House.
Yes, according to historical fact, too. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Anthony Burgess, one of your most endearing characters is F.X. Enderby, the poet, and he's been running through your literary life for many years.
Yes, indeed.
There's another preoccupation, I guess.
I don't know. It's a very curious thing. Some things can't be explained. I was living in Borneo in the late 1950s, and was suffering very badly from sandfly fever, which we call dengue. I was delirious.
What was it called?
It's called sandfly fever. It's a kind of malaria, only rather worse, called dengue. Dengue is the real name. And I remember opening the bathroom door in the bungalow where I lived and seeing a man seated on the toilet writing a poem. The vision lasted for about a microsecond, but the figure stuck in my mind, and I felt I had to write a book about a man stuck in the toilet, the smallest room in the house, writing poetry, and the figure stuck. I couldn't get rid of him. I killed him off. There was a little book about Enderby in New York, in which he dies of a heart attack after a hefty New York meal, and then I had to write another book in which he came back to life again and was hearty and, to me, as vivid as ever in Indianapolis. This I can't explain, but some characters get in your mind from nowhere, and there they are, there they stay.
Mr. Enderby, as I recall, in one, I think it was Enderby's End, was teaching up at CCNY, maybe
something like that.
Something
yes,
like
I had to disguise the name of college, but he
coincided with your tenure there.
Yes, pretty well. He went through my own experiences.
Yes, you did not paint a very pretty picture very lovely landscape of the Upper West Side of Manhattan during that
Well,
period.
it's not very beautiful, is it, unfortunately? I think it may have improved, but I'm going back 10 years now, when I was a distinguished or extinguished professor up there. And I had to teach on Convent Avenue and go through Harlem, and those were the great days when everybody had a right to university education, but they didn't feel they had a duty to work. So one had to fight, and some of these fights involved ethnic elements which were very difficult to cope with for me, a foreigner, stranger. But it wasn't a dull time. Far from it.
You cannot say that New York is dull. You can say a lot of things about it, but
not
it
dull.
certainly is not
dull. Oh, no.
You, I have to say that you infuriated a great deal of confirmed readers with your list of 99 novels.
Yes, that was the intention.
And I recall, I wish I'd clipped some of the responses, but there were letters to the editor and all sorts of articles in response to the 99 outstanding achievements of fiction in the English language since World War II. That took a certain temerity, isn't it?
Well, in a sense, it's a joke. All books are games, you know, all books are tricks. But what had happened was this: in England, a small body of people had been commissioned by the Book Marketing Board to give a list of the 10 greatest novels since the war, and the list they provided was, in my view, totally absurd. It was partisan. It contained writers I'd never heard of. So the particular publisher, run by Nigerians in London. You know, they were black publishing in London. And they said, let us produce a book in which we present, you know, the real big novels of the century, and let us do it quickly. You, Burgess, write the book in 2 weeks, and we will publish it in 3. So this was done. That is, I think, probably the most swiftly written book ever, and it was certainly most swiftly published. I would agree, for the most part, with the people who object to it, because as soon as you've set down a list like that, you realize it's wrong. The things you left out, things you should have put in. And, of course, the women were angry because there weren't enough women novelists there.
Well, I think you made a point. You said that the list that had been published in England that you disagreed with, there were books there by writers you never heard of. But there are writers on this list that I have never heard of.
Well, I mean, the list is not, I think, insular. I don't think it's a British list. It's an Anglo-American list.
Well, it's weighted to the British.
Well, I wonder whether that's true. I mean, you know, all your big American writers there, Bellow and Malamud and Mailer. Mailer's there twice, I think. Bellow's there twice. And so we go on.
Left out Styron.
Siren's there.
Is he there?
Yes, Siren is there, and Phil Roth is there. I think they're all there. I think it's a fair.
Wait a minute.
I think it's a fair listing. Oh yeah, I wrote it, sir. I wrote it.
All right. What book was it?
By Phil Roth.
No, the Styron.
Well, by Siren, Sophie's Choice.
Okay, good choice.
I thought so. I thought so at the time. Yes. No, but I think one has to do this kind of thing occasionally, just to make people wake up a little and start considering what really makes a good book. I've had a lot of trouble in my own mind lately because I consider that Herman Wouk, with whom I have a friendly correspondence, is a very considerable writer. I think the 2 volumes he wrote about the war, Winds of War and War and Remembrance, are very considerable works of fiction. And yet, in Europe, they're regarded as mere best-selling trash. And yet a novel comes out of Russia, like the new one by Grossman, called Love and Fate, a very pretentious title, which all by George Steiner and similar critics. All Western fiction pales into insignificance compared with this Russian masterpiece. They say the same thing about Solzhenitsyn. But I think that a man like Wouk is quite as big as they are. And I get worried because critics take certain standards for granted. And I think we have to look at those standards occasionally and reconsider them. And that's what I was trying to do there. I put, I think, Wouk's The Caine Mutiny in there. It's an outstanding work of fiction, which it is. He got the Pulitzer Prize.
Yes, his later work has not been received critically, and I don't know why.
Well, I asked the question why. I mean, I don't make any judgment myself, but I asked the question, why do we not consider Wouk a more important novel than maybe? I know it's a best-selling novel, he must make a lot of money, but the amount of research that goes into his work, the plausibility of the situations, the panoramic picture you get is quite remarkable.
But isn't it interesting that writers fall in and out of favor, that somebody will suddenly be rediscovered or discovered many years sometimes after his death?
We expect that. I suppose I mentioned Wouk and his capacity to produce these mammoth novels of 1,000 pages or more each, Because in England, my own country, there's a tendency to praise only and to give prizes to novels written by nice English ladies who live in Hampstead in London and write about discreet